Usually when I open up my news feed to see what's happening in AI, it's all very product focused.
Right.
It's the latest chatbot update or a new tool that makes video from text or maybe a debate about students using it to cheat. It feels like we're discussing a utility.
Yeah, like a new power drill or a faster microwave.
Exactly. It's the better calculator mindset. We just focus on what the tool can do for us right now.
But the stack of sources we're looking at today, this feels different.
Very different. We're not looking at product reviews. We're looking at a fundamental shift in how we structure society around this technology. We're talking legislation, global education, and even, well, geopolitics.
It's a huge shift. The conversation in these documents, and they range from a proposed Civil Rights Act all the way to a UNESCO framework. It's moving away from how do I use this to who controls this.
And do we still have agency?
That's the core question.
Agency is the word that just kept jumping out at me. Agency in the voting booth, agency in the classroom, and agency on a national stage. We have a lot to get through, including a really fascinating comparison between AI and the old oil wars.
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely get to that.
But I want to start with the individual. I want to start with the AI Civil Rights Act.
This is a heavy piece of proposed legislation, and it basically exists because the authors are arguing that we're in this Wild West situation where huge life decisions, getting a house, a job, healthcare, are being handed off to machines with, well, zero oversight.
And the core argument is that without rules, discrimination just gets automated.
Right.
But let me push back on that for a second, just to play devil's advocate. I think a lot of people hear that and are skeptical. We're taught math is neutral. 2 + 2 is always 4. If an algorithm denies a loan, isn't it just looking at the numbers, like credit score and income? How can code be discriminatory?
That is the most common misconception, and it's one the source material spends a lot of time on. The math itself might be neutral, but the fuel for that the data is absolutely not.
Okay.
If you train an AI on 40 years of housing data, you're not just feeding it numbers. You're feeding it the entire history of redlining. You're feeding it the history of segregation.
So the AI looks at the patterns of who got loans in the past and just assumes that's the correct pattern for who should get loans now.
Precisely. It doesn't know history. It just sees accuracy.
Yeah.
And the stats in this source material are, they're genuinely staggering. They cite cases where mortgage algorithms denied Black applicants up to 80% more often than white applicants with similar financial profiles.
80%. That is not a rounding error.
No, it's a systemic wall. And it's not just housing. The sources detail hiring algorithms, filtering out women or people of color before a human even sees the resume. They talk about predictive policing software, sending more patrols to Black and Latino neighborhoods simply because that's where the historical arrest data is. It just creates a feedback loop.
So the AI Civil Rights Act is trying to put a brake on that loop, but how? You can't just ban math. What's the proposal?
It relies on a few things, but the big ones are transparency and independent audits.
Okay, transparency sounds simple enough.
It does, but think about it. If you apply for a credit card and get rejected instantly, do you know if a human reviewed it?
No, I just assumed the computer said no.
Right, but you don't know why. The act would require disclosure. You'd have a right to know when an algorithm is making the call. But the audit is the much stronger mechanism.
And this isn't the company checking its own homework, I'm guessing.
That is the crucial distinction. We've seen plenty of internal audits where a tech giant investigates itself and, surprise, finds no wrongdoing. This proposal calls for independent third-party audits before a system is even deployed.
So it's shifting the model from move fast and break things to something more like, what, the FDA or the auto industry?
Exactly. You don't sell the car until the brakes are tested.
That sounds great in theory, but I imagine it's incredibly difficult. We're talking about black box models. Sometimes the engineers don't even fully know how it reached a conclusion. How do you audit that?
And that is the friction point. The source material admits this is hard. An audit here isn't just looking at code, it's testing outcomes. You have to stress test it. You feed it thousands of hypothetical applicants, different races, genders, same qualifications, and you see if the results skew.
So it's less about reading the code line by line and more about observing the behavior.
Exactly. And the whole point, according to the text, is prevention. Right now, our legal system is reactive. You have to wait until you're harmed, prove it, and then sue.
Which is expensive and slow.
Right. This act tries to stop the discriminatory model from ever getting out there in the first place.
It frames it as a civil rights issue, not a tech glitch. That's a powerful reframing. But if these systems are going to exist, even with rules, we need to know how to handle them. We can't just rely on the government.
Which brings us to the second part of our stack, education. We have this massive UNESCO AI competency framework and the ED Semite ebook.
Now, when I see competency framework, my eyes usually glaze over. I expect a list of technical skills, intro to Python or data science 101.
Right.
But reading the UNESCO document, that is not the vibe at all.
No, it's surprisingly philosophical. UNESCO is arguing that we need to move beyond coding literacy to agency literacy. They break a student's journey into 3 levels: understand, apply, and create.
Let's walk through those because create meant something very different than what I expected. Understand seems pretty basic, just knowing what AI is.
It is, but it's critical. It's about breaking the magic spell.
Okay.
A lot of people, adults included, look at something like ChatGPT like it's an oracle or wizard. The understand level is about stripping that away and seeing it for what it is.
Statistic.
It's just predicting the next word.
Yeah.
It's not thinking a thought.
Okay, then there's apply, which is using the tools.
Using them effectively, checking facts, all that. But create, this is where I had my aha moment with the text. Usually create in a STEM curriculum means build a robot.
Yeah, build the thing.
But here, create also includes the ability to critique the system. It includes competencies like problem scoping and, this is my favorite, shut down decisions.
Shut down decisions. I stopped on that one too. So we're teaching kids to decide when to pull the plug.
Yes. It's teaching students that just because you can build an AI for something doesn't mean you should. If a system is biased or it's harming the environment or it invades privacy, the creative act is to say, no, we shut this down.
That is incredibly empowering. It puts the human as the supervisor, not just the user.
And you see this in the ED Summit ebook too. They distinguish between learning about AI and learning with AI, but they also bring in this idea of the ecological framework.
Break that down for us. That sounds a bit academic.
It basically means you can't teach a student in a vacuum. You can't teach a kid to value privacy if the school they're in is using facial recognition to take attendance. The environment teaches the student just as much as the textbook.
So if the school treats students like data points, the students learn that being a data point is just normal.
Exactly. You can't teach agency in an environment of surveillance.
The sources also had some great concrete classroom examples. I loved the peanut butter and jelly algorithm.
Oh, it's a classic for a reason. You ask students to write literal instructions for making a sandwich. Then the teacher acts as the computer and follows them exactly.
So if the student writes, put peanut butter on the bread, but doesn't say open the jar,
Then the teacher smashes the jar into the bread. It's funny, but it teaches a profound lesson about AI literalism. The machine has no context, no common sense. It does exactly what you tell it, which is often not what you want it to do.
and that connects right back to the bias issue. The machine isn't trying to be racist. It's just literally following the data pattern you gave it.
Right. There was another example called Teachable Machine. Students train a simple classifier, say, cats versus dogs. But you intentionally give them a bad data set.
How so?
Like maybe all the pictures of dogs are outside in the grass and all the cats are inside on a rug.
So the AI learns that grass means dog.
Exactly. Then you show it a cat on the grass and it confidently says dog. It shows them in real time that the blind spot is in the data, not the code. It builds that critical thinking.
So we have the legal framework trying to protect our rights. We have the educational framework trying to build our mental defenses. But there's a third layer here, and it's the biggest one. It's the physical infrastructure.
This is where we zoom out to the whole geopolitical map, and the paper we read, The Commodification of AI Sovereignty, makes a very bold claim. It compares the current race for AI infrastructure directly to the 20th century oil wars.
I mean, data is the new oil is a cliche, right? But this paper argues it's not just a metaphor, it's structural.
It is. They have this visual comparison that really stuck with me. They compare a 1942 Exxon war map, which showed oil supply lines as key to winning World War II, to a 2024 NVIDIA investor slide.
And the NVIDIA slide shows
Yes.
chip factories.
It shows sovereign AI clouds. It's framing national power not by how many tanks you have, but by how much compute you possess. There's a quote in there, something like, if the 20th century ran on oil and steel, the 21st century runs on compute and the minerals that feed it.
So let's talk about this term, sovereign AI. It sounds like a buzzword. What does it actually mean for a country to have it?
The paper breaks it down into a few types. First, there's interdependent sovereignty. This is basically border control for data.
Like digital customs. You can't take our citizens' data out of the country.
Exactly. The source mentions South Korea investigating a company for sending user data to China. That's a nation asserting its sovereignty. Then you have Westphalian sovereignty.
Westphalian. Okay, that takes me back to Political Science 101. That's the idea that a state is the supreme authority in its territory.
Yep, keep the outsiders out. In the AI context, it means a nation wants its own AI stack. They don't want to rely on Amazon or Microsoft. They want their own servers, their own models. They want to be independent.
And then there was domestic sovereignty, which had that really interesting part on indigenous data sovereignty.
Yes, the First Nations principles in Canada. OCA. Ownership, control, access, possession. It's a reminder that sovereignty isn't just for nation-states. Indigenous communities are saying, we refuse to be mined for data. We refuse to cede our knowledge to governments or corporations.
It's about not being a resource for someone else to extract. But here's the paradox the paper points out, and this is the part that really twisted my brain. Most countries can't build their own chips. They can't build their own data centers. So if a country wants sovereign AI, who do they call?
They call the U.S. tech giants. They call NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google.
So wait, to get their independence, they have to buy it from the very corporations they want to be independent from.
That is the trap. The paper argues that these giants are effectively selling sovereignty as a product. They go to a government and say, we will build you a sovereign cloud. But the authors call this a potential form of digital colonialism.
Digital colonialism. That's a heavy phrase.
It fits, though. Think about the 20th century. If you were a small nation with oil, but you couldn't drill for it, you had to bring in a foreign giant. They got the oil, you got a cut, but you lost control. You became a client state.
And now if your entire national infrastructure runs on American servers, maintained by American engineers, updated with American code, is it really yours?
That's the question. If the off switch is in Silicon Valley, you are not sovereign. The paper warns we're seeing the commodification of a political value. Sovereignty used to be something intrinsic to the state. Now, it's a line item on an invoice from a vendor.
It really connects everything we've talked about today. It all comes back to that word, agency.
It does. The Civil Rights Act is about protecting the individual's agency from the algorithm. The UNESCO framework is about giving the student agency over the algorithm. And the sovereignty debate is about nations trying to maintain agency over the entire infrastructure of the algorithm.
It makes you realize that AI isn't just a tech topic. It's a power topic. It's about who holds the keys.
And we are at a critical moment. All the sources point to, right now, the next year or two, as when these rules are being written, the curriculum's being drafted, the infrastructure deals are being signed, we're living through the foundation setting.
So for the listener who's just trying to get through their workday, who maybe used AI to draft an email this morning, what's the takeaway? Why should they care about digital colonialism?
I think the takeaway is to shift your mindset from user to participant. When you interact with these systems, don't just ask, did he give me the right answer? Ask the harder questions.
Like that.
Who owns this data? Who trained this model? Am I retaining my own ability to think, or am I just outsourcing it?
It's applying that human-centered mindset from UNESCO to your own life.
Exactly. Don't let the better calculator lull you to sleep.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought from that last paper on sovereignty. We usually think of independence as breaking away from reliance on others. But in this AI age, where the resources, the energy, the chips, the data are so concentrated, is true independence even possible anymore? Or are we moving into a world where everyone, from the individual to the nation-state, is just a client of what you might call the compute empire?
That is the uncomfortable question. And the answer isn't in the tech, it's in the politics. It's in how we choose to regulate and educate right now.
Heavy stuff, but necessary stuff. We've gone from the voting booth to the classroom to the war room. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure. Keep questioning.
We'll see you next time.